Absolute Wonder Woman number 2, aka Mother-Daughter Kaiju time. If you watched the review of issue number 1, that makes sense. If not, then go watch the review of issue number 1, because this is issue 2 and we're gonna jump right in. Okay, we'll do a little bit of a cliff notes. I'm a bit late, I was doing stuff, Lori. Things. Absolute Wonder Woman is part of the Absolute Universe, which launched in late 2024 as part of the DC All-In initiative. It's part of a separate universe with different versions of the characters, but they're meant to retain their cores. Wonder Woman is still an Amazon, but now she's been positioned as kind of the last of the Amazons. The other Amazons have been sealed off somewhere, so it's not exactly a last son of Krypton type thing, but there are some vestiges of that. Because her people are sealed off, she was raised by Circe in hell. Now some may be wondering, which hell? Greco-Roman river Styx type underworld, or Judeo-Christian fire and brimstone hell? The answer is yet to be entirely forthcoming. The approach to maintain Diana's core taken by the creative team has been as follows. It's to have Diana's inner goodness and compassion be so powerful it is entirely unaffected by her time in or the environment of hell. So far, as of 2 issues in. So basically, she softens the things around her rather than them having some kind of impact on her that she then has to work through to then reassert that core. So she doesn't really have any anger or issues or resentments about her situation, or at least if she did, they haven't been presented. So rather than her having to rise up so that those core elements can shine through, it's more presented that so far she doesn't really have much conflict. The way it's instead put across is more like this is a dark fairy tale, a dark princess fantasy, down to the fact that when they're describing some of her core attributes, beauty is placed first. There is a bit of a she's a princess who kicks butt vibe going on. Circe being her mother has so far not factored in outside of the magical teachings. It's very much an idyllic mother-daughter relationship with little to no friction. Circe was the narrator of the first issue and gave glimpses into Diana's past and also some of the feeling behind her sending her out there, basically hyping her up. These flashbacks were intercut with a giant battle at Gateway City. There were some nods to Greco-Roman mythology, such as Diana yeeting, yes it says yeet on panel, the snake that comes to attack her as a baby, a la Hercules or Heracles. There's a Cerberus. You can see a couple of other mythological creature sightings. Now, some thought this was cute, others rankled at it, wanting to see things be a bit more direct or accurate. For example, some weren't pleased that it was Apollo and not Helios. But then there's also the factor of who people are going to recognize. And usually with these mythological outings, some liberties are taken. So that becomes entirely down to the individual whether or not it bothers them. Wonder Woman's lore has oft times played fast and loose with some things. On the whole, it was a well-received issue with a huge cool factor for Diana and a very intense monster battle which allowed the artist's style to shine through. And it's at that battle that we pick up for issue 2. This series is written by Kelly Thompson with art by Hayden Sherman and colors by Jordi Belair. The first arc is entitled The Last Amazon. Issue 1 served as the base establishment of Diana's character and history. Circe is no longer narrating this issue, although it does still have some flashbacks to her past. To Diana's past, that is, but what they're focusing on is different. As for the start, Diana is in the battle with the Harbingers, and like issue 1, it's a highly dynamic fight, and we get to see her new lasso in action. This is the Nemesis lasso. This Diana tends to monologue a bit dramatically in a kind of high fantasy style dialogue about what she's doing in terms of this kind of context, so you get to hear the entire history of the lasso. Hear me, Harbinger Prime, for I bring to you Nemesis, a weapon forged in the fires of hell, fashioned by my mother, the sorceress Circe, made from the remains of the last basilisk, infused with the blood of Prometheus, blessed by Demeter, goddess of the harvest, mother of us all. And for you, Harbinger Prime, Nemesis will be a particular hell, for she binds and burns in proportion to your sins, and your soul shines bright with the blood of the innocent. This is a pretty cool flip on the lasso of truth, because it retains a lot of that base concept, even if it's now infused with some Ghost Rider penance stare energy. The original lasso of truth, like much of Wonder Woman's original Golden Age lore, is a little complicated. The man who was partially responsible for the polygraph test, he also was responsible for her creation. And in those stories, it was a weapon of submission, and it could be painful because forcing the truth out of someone could be that. But there was also an acceptance and a release in it and a freedom. Like a lot of Golden Age Wonder Woman, there's some intense BDSM reasoning that's lurking just below the surface, or sometimes right on top. Sometimes it's not subtext, it's just text. The Nemesis lasso retains a lot of that, but it makes it a bit more of an aggressive, painful outing off the bat. It's falling more onto the Sado side of things, but it's performing the same function. Truth swapped for sins, and pain is a part of the process. It is potentially a bit darker because there's a torture element here, but that could also be present in the lasso of truth. I'm thinking about that failed Wonder Woman pilot, Pants to be Darkened, where she just goes and tortures somebody with it. You can watch all of that online. This type of lasso and its usage, it does align with a Wonder Woman raised in hell. Because even though she's doing this, she's ultimately just trying to get the creature to go away. But a moment like this would have been bolstered even further if her personality was shown to have been more impacted by her time in hell. Conceptually, it's very strong, and the visuals match the aesthetic. Diana does look very menacing in a lot of these panels, cool and in control, but there's also a wide range of expressions for her in this issue. Sherman's art makes her feel complex, which is good because inherently Wonder Woman is. There's a balancing that's always happening there between the warrior elements and the compassionate elements. And you get to see some of that play out in some of these panels, like here where her expression softens when she re-encounters Steve. Yes, it's absolute Steve Trevor. I can hear some of you going, but why though? Steve has a complicated history of people not liking him, killing him off, and thinking that he's bland like plain toast. Now, some felt that Steve looked a little feminine in this art style, and they got a bit excited about that maybe this was a gender swap, but no, it's not. Steve is just being rendered as slighter than Diana. But then again, most people are, because this art really emphasizes the fact that she's an Amazon. She's bigger than everybody, a tad broader. But this issue wants to constantly reinforce that she is an Amazon through the visuals. Now, the flashbacks in this issue are to Steve and Diana in hell, which continues the Disney princess vibes. Their meeting is very Little Mermaid, only she doesn't sing. She magically teaches him her language. Diana is instantly super into Steve in a pretty possessive way. If it is not, then I will kill it. He does not belong to the Hydra. And who does he belong to, daughter? You? Of course not. He belongs to himself, but I found him, and so I'm responsible for his life. I'm not sure that's entirely true, but admirable nonetheless. I'll put the kettle on. These sequences are cute, and there's a lot of nonverbal cues, head tilts, blushes that complement the writing to showcase Diana's crush. Steve even has a reaction to being in hell. Not that it clarifies which it is. Give him time, Diana. It's quite a shock. Why do you think he's here, Mother? I don't know. Do you think it's a test or a trap or a gift? Thirst. So much thirst. In a scene like this, one would think Cersei would react with maybe some caution, annoyance, or at the very least concern. Anything to do with Steve disrupting their life. Cersei doesn't do much mothering. She's very passive in the role. It has this kind of daughter fantasy element projecting back onto the motherhood aspect. I'm well aware some will not read it like that, but it is something that I note whenever I read these issues. It may not be something that you do, and you may disagree, and if so, feel free to put it down below. Everybody has different experiences, it's coming from different vantage points, so how they react to a work is going to be different. Everybody's bringing something different to it, and that's part of the fun. Now, another thing that maybe miles may vary is the flirting. I posted some panels of it and was met with a combination of why Steve? Cute and cringe. It does give them a nice foundation, and the swap of Cersei being more accepting of Steve and not outright hostile like the Amazons were in the main canon does provide a softer, less fraught foundation for the two of them. And as a result, he can come across feeling a bit less like an act of rebellion and more as someone who she's actually interested in getting to know. Now in the present of the plot, while Steve is happy to see Diana, his superiors are not. And Diana is presented as arrogant. It's not put forth as a flaw because she happens to be right, but it is interesting and it adds another layer to her that she can come across all of these different ways to different people. The wrap-up allows Diana to showcase her authority, but also takes some more softer moments with Steve. And there are also some hints that something else happened on the island that involving Steve and how he got off and sacrifice and life and all of those things. So there are still some mysteries to be solved. What's his name? Pegasus. I know he's a Pegasus, but what's his name? Pegasus. Your Pegasus is named Pegasus? Steve, my winged horse is the great mythological winged horse Pegasus, born of Medusa's blood, slain by Zeus. That's the explanation for why it's a skeleton, by the way, because it's dead. It eats magic. Is Pegasus the Pegasus a better name than Jerry the Pegasus? Yara Floor wants to know. This issue ends with the arrival of a new giant monstrosity, the Tetracide, and there's a macabre beauty to that page, and it really encompasses the scale of it. Sherman's art style is very well suited to these giant monstrous images against the landscape, and even Diana is taken aback by it and a bit afraid, and you can see that in her face. Goddesses protect us all. The Tetracide leaves nothing behind. Issue 2 of Absolute Wonder Woman is a very strong one, and in one key fashion, much stronger than the first. This issue actually allows the reader to get a fuller sense of Diana as a person. And while she isn't being impacted by her upbringing in ways that would seem like they would shape her, she is nuanced and she does have different modes. There's some determination, there's some warmth, there's some curiosity. There's grace, but also a hardcore assertiveness. A lot of her traits are balanced. This issue lays some fun kernels for questions like how did she get her Pegasus and what else happened with Steve. And it also has this hook, there's going to be yet another giant battle. Once more, it's more focused on the external conflict, but that seems to be where this issue and this series so far is putting most of its focus. And that conflict has been ramped up and promises an ominous challenge. And the art continues to lift up the emotional resonance of certain scenes. It does still lack a bit of internal conflict for Diana or Cersei or really any of the characters, and some of the changes are not being mined as much as they perhaps could be in terms of environment. Cersei could at this point be replaced with any female character with magical abilities for all the impact that her being that person is having on the story and their relationship. What it means to be raised in isolation, to have this forbidden purpose, to have been foisted upon a prisoner and change their life, to learn the fate of one's own people. So far, those things haven't been explored. So one could view that as potentially as a layer of depth being left out. Others may feel it may come later, and others may feel the focus may just lie elsewhere. Because as it must be said, we're only 2 issues in time of recording. A lot can happen in future issues. And so far, it is building very nicely upon itself. And there are some areas that are nicely focused on this issue, like how Diana handles both wielding and clashing with authority, and that subtle shift between her as she is and her in warrior mode. There's an overall moody atmosphere to this issue that doesn't overwhelm, but adds a distinctness to it. It was I was looking for an absolute pun, but it would not come, but I'm sure some of you will put them down below, and I look forward to reading them. There's a really cool vibe to this book, and the art really works for me, although in my opinion it could use a bit more focus on some of the internal strife of some of the characters, but perhaps that may come, and all of these are just my opinions and I want to hear yours. For example, I know some people really aren't gelling with the art. I want to hear it all. Please put it down below. While you're down there, please follow YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking this time today spent discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Any excuse to wear black lipstick. Any at all.